Kurt, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks for having me on.
Dude, I'm absolutely honored to sit down with you. I think you're like the fifth or sixth wrestler we've had on the show over the years throughout the course of this show. And, diving into what you were my childhood, man. Like growing up watching the Attitude Era, watching you really do your thing on the screen. And then really getting to know your backstory. Recently watching your documentary that was on Peacock, which is an absolutely well done documentary. I think WWE knocked it out of the park. But what do you got going on now, man? I know Kurt's always got something cooking. He's always working on something. What are you working on now?
Well, I have two big projects right now that I'm doing. One is raising money for USA Wrestling for the men's and women's wrestling teams. Um, and also, I have a real life movie about my life story coming out. We're actually working, the script is almost done. We're going to start picking the cast in the spring, and then I think we start shooting by summer. So, those two big things are what I'm doing right now, what I'm focused on.
That's amazing. If you could, I don't know if you can say this since you're actually working on it. If you could pick the perfect actor to play you, who do you think that would be?
Oh man, you know what? It's hard. It's
Yeah.
really hard to find somebody that resembles you. Um, what we're thinking at this point in time, and this is not finalized, but there's a really talented kid from Canada. His name's Gabe LaBelle. Um, he did the movie about, gosh, Steven Spielberg.
Okay. Oh yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, he was the one that I think played Spielberg, I believe. He's a 25-year-old, looks great, really fit. He just needs to get a little bigger, gain a little more size, which I don't think will be a problem. But that's who we've been throwing around right now. Um, we got who's the one that's playing my father is John Bernthal.
Oh wow, yeah.
John's the Punisher. He's a great actor, one of the best actors in Hollywood. So right now we're just trying to get the script done. We're getting investors. We're in the process of doing that right now, but it's a process. But eventually, it'll pay off.
Yeah, you're related to John, aren't you?
Yeah, he was married. He married my niece.
Okay.
So yeah, so we're related by marriage, but I love the guy. He's pretty much my nephew.
I love it, man. I love it.
Yeah.
So let's dive into you helping these amateur athletes who are getting ready to go into the Olympics and training. I think it's a crime in so many ways. The amount of money that you guys bring to these large networks, with people tuning in and the sponsors they sell, and these athletes don't get paid to do what they love and to truly do the craft at their top. What made you want to dive into helping these athletes get supported while they're training?
Well, you know what? The problem with the United States, and it's not a problem, but our athletes, for the most part, a lot of them have to get jobs because they're not making a living and they're not getting paid to do their sport. Obviously, they're going to get paid if they win a medal because the Olympic Committee now has a certain amount of money set aside that they pay whoever medals in the Olympics. They give them a certain amount of money, but getting up to the Olympics, they're not making any money. So what I did in 1995 and 96 is I got a little creative. I put on spaghetti dinner fundraisers. I sold autographed photos. I sold autographed T-shirts. I had sponsors that stepped up for me, a few of them, and I was able to make ends meet. And I didn't have to worry about earning a living. And I was able to train 11, 12 hours a day. Our athletes today, for the most part, they have to get jobs and they have to train around their work schedule. So if they're working 8 to 10 hours a day, they're only going to have time to train maybe 2, 3 hours tops. And that doesn't fare well for an Olympic athlete. So I'm here to raise money for USA Wrestling, the men's and women's Olympic freestyle wrestling teams, and the men's Olympic Greco-Roman wrestling team. So these athletes don't have to get jobs. They can train, focus on training and competition for the next 4 years.
Yeah, I mean, I've had a number of Olympians on my show, some gold medalists, some bronze and silver medalists, and the amount of work that it goes into, that goes into competing at that level, and then going ahead and being the best of the best, like you were in 1996, is absolutely insane. Let's talk a little bit about what you were doing to get ready for the Olympics because you were able to do it full time. What did that look for you like day to day, week to week, training to get ready for it?
I trained about 11, 12 hours a day. I'd have 3 a day practices. Morning would be my conditioning workout, which would last about 2.5 hours. I would do, 30 hill sprints, 100-yard hill sprints. Then I would run 6 miles at a really fast pace. and then I would sprint and jog on the airdyne bike for about an hour, and then I would go in the sauna. And the afternoon, I would wrestle. I would drill and for about an hour, wrestle for about an hour and a half live, and then I would do conditioning after that for about a half hour. And then at night was my weight training, strength training, and plyometrics and core training. So I probably did about 2.5 hours of that, maybe 3 hours. So I was training about 10, 11, 12 hours a day. And it was a full schedule, and I didn't have any other time to do anything else.
Yeah, it's absolutely insane. And when you watch your documentary, you talk a little bit about the training that you did, which is the exhaustive training. I think I'm saying it correct.
Exhaust training, yes.
Exhaust training. So talk a little bit about that. Like, what did that do for you when you were competing through the Olympics and to kind of push through and finally get that gold?
Well, in 1993 and 1994, these two wrestlers, you might know them. Mark Coleman, he was UFC champion.
Yeah.
Mark Kerr, he's the guy that fought in Pride, Smashing Machine. They're doing a movie about him right now. Those two
Is that with
guys
The
were
Rock?
I'm sorry?
Is that the one The Rock is doing?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
yes, it is. So those two guys were beating me consistently during 1993 and 1994, the World Team Trials seasons. So after the 1994 season, I decided to quit. I figured I'm never going to beat these guys. I'll never make the World Team or the Olympic team, so why even try? And I went home and I sat at home for 5 months feeling sorry for myself. And every day I had guilt feelings. You just eat me alive saying, what if you could have made the team? You're never going to know unless you see this through to the end. And you're going to regret it if you don't try. So I came back, but I came back with a game plan. And that was exhaust training. What that entails, that's when you train till you're exhausted. And that's when the training actually begins. It's almost a form of torture. I learned this from the University of Iowa head wrestling coach, Dan Gable. He taught his wrestlers this. And I knew I wasn't the biggest or the fastest or the strongest or the most technical or the best wrestler in my weight class. But what I knew I could be is the most well-conditioned. I would wear my opponents down and score on them once they got tired. And that's how I won. I won the Olympic trials and the Olympic gold medal.
Yeah, as you talk about what you went through, I'm hearing, the dedication to your craft, dedication to being the best, the willingness to go above and beyond. Where did that come from, for you? I think it's something, I don't know if it's something learned. Is it something that you were born with? How did you become that person who was so dedicated?
Well, I came from a family that took a lot of pride in playing sports. Sports were what we talked about at the dinner table every night. My dad was an athlete. My mother was an athlete. Um, they instilled in us about work ethic that sports would be the best thing for it. And my brothers were really hard on me. So I have four older brothers and I have an older sister. My sister's the one that would like hug me and kiss my boo-boos. My brothers would beat the crap out of me and, make me do all this crazy stuff. Having high expectations in a family like that, they were all really good wrestlers. I ended up being the best out of all of them, probably because I was the youngest, but because I got more exposure from them, training me and getting me ready for different events. So having a family like that really helped my career and really helped me to succeed and have high expectations on where I wanted to be.
Yeah, and I mean, I imagine being the youngest, you were like, I got to show these guys up. I got to show
Oh
them that
yeah,
I got what
yeah.
it takes.
Yeah,
I mean, that's
what? It's funny because my brother Mark is a real badass, and I didn't start beating him. He would train with me, come to my high school, and he was he was probably 28 years old at the time, and he would come into my high school and train with me, and he was whipping my butt. And by my freshman year in college, I started whipping his butt, and that's when he stopped wrestling me. He's like, "Okay, I'm done." So I finally was able to beat him, and it was a huge landmark for me because he was one of those guys I always wanted to beat, but I never could. And then eventually I was able to do it.
yeah. So obviously, you were a great football player too in high school. When did it shift for you to get into the amateur wrestling and became much more passionate about that than football?
I love football. It was my first love. My brothers took a lot more pride in wrestling, and but my success in football, I was I was an all-state football player. I had a really great 3 years on varsity in high school. I got recruited pretty heavily for college, but for some reason, wrestling was always tugging at me. I think it's because you only depend on yourself and nobody else gets the credit. Nobody else gets blamed. It's all you and only you. And I like having control like that. I don't like to have my fate dependent on my other my peers, my teammates. I was more of an individual type of athlete than I was a team athlete.
Yeah, no, I love it. And I love that whole idea because I think a lot of times in entrepreneurship, which is a lot of who I talk to with this podcast and so on and so forth, is the idea that like to get into entrepreneurship, it is really like you guts and glory, right? Like put it all on the line, risk it to start a business and see where it goes. And it falls on you to create the income, create the schedule, do the work.
Right, right.
And so I think people can truly relate to that type of a mindset, especially in the business world. Now, obviously, shifting gears a little bit, you ended up shifting into professional wrestling,
Yes.
which is more common now. Back then, to kind of give an idea to some people in amateur wrestling, they'd be like, no, that stuff's fake. That stuff's the worst. They would never jump into it. And you were really the first big name to make that jump into professional wrestling. What was that like for you? Because I'm sure you had that mindset of what professional wrestling was at one point, and then embracing it, becoming one of the greatest of all time. How did that shift happen for you?
Okay, what happened was in 1996, after I won the Olympics, Vince McMahon called my agent and he said, I want to meet with Kurt Angle. Could he come up to my headquarters? And when my agent told me, I was like, I don't want to do pro wrestling. To an amateur wrestler, we always took the back seat to pro wrestlers. So if someone asked me, what do you do for a living? I'd say, I wrestle. They'd say, oh, you're one of those wrestlers on TV. And it was like, no, you idiot. I'm an amateur wrestler. I'm an Olympian. And, taking the back seat to them for all these years and knowing that what we do is real and what pro wrestling do is, I guess I would say it's predetermined. I wouldn't say it's fake, but it's
Yeah.
predetermined. So I took a lot of pride in being an amateur wrestler. So I remember when Vince offered me the contract, it was a multi-million-dollar deal. And I brought it back to my agent. My agent was also a former amateur wrestler. And he said, you're not signing this. This is crap. I'll get you a real job. He ends up getting me a job as a sportscaster. And I turned down the WWE contract. But the sportscasting didn't work out so well. After about a year, I quit because I was horrible. And I started watching the WWE, and I fell in love with a character named Stone Cold Steve Austin. And I was like, wow, man, I want to be just like him. And little did I know I was going to be the complete opposite of him. But it was, he drew my interest. And so I called the WWE in 1998, 2 years later, and I asked if that contract still stood. And they said, no, but you can come up and try out. I figured nothing in my life's ever come easy. I'll go up and work for it. So I went up and tried out. And after the first day, I picked up on everything so quickly it offered me a contract. But it wasn't a good contract. It was a horrible contract. It was $75,000 a year. Mm. And remember this, you're getting paid $75,000 a year, but you're traveling and they only pay for your flights. You pay for the rental car, the hotel, the food, 200 days a year. Okay, yeah. $75,000 doesn't last very long. So I was struggling for a while until I made it on TV. And after my first year on TV, I had so much success that I made over $1 million that year. And that's when I told Vince I want that $1 million guaranteed from here on in, because he still had me on that contract, that $75,000 a year contract. So he gave me that money, which was really cool. It made me feel more secure. If I would have gotten injured, I still would have made the money, having the guarantee. Yeah. So I just came into pro wrestling, and what I had to do is forget everything I ever learned in amateur wrestling. It is so different. Pro wrestling and amateur wrestling, I'll give you a couple examples. In pro wrestling or in amateur wrestling, you're taught to show no emotion. You have a poker face. You don't want your opponent to know what you're thinking or feeling. In pro wrestling, you have to show every emotion because that's what the fans invest in. So you have to show when you're excited, angry, happy, sad, whatever it is. And so that was hard for me to transition to. And not only that, but in amateur wrestling, you're taught to be overly aggressive, take your opponent down, turn him and pin him as quickly as you can, get the match over with. In pro wrestling, you have to slow down, tell a story. Good guy versus bad guy. Good guy out wrestles the bad guy. The bad guy cheats and gets a good guy down for the heat. The good guy makes the comeback. The bad guy either cheats and wins, or the good guy overcomes the cheating and wins. So they're completely different. So I took a defensive approach to it. I didn't want my opponents to think I was going to be dangerous. Being an Olympic gold medalist, you're pretty much a badass. So,
Yeah.
I didn't want people to be afraid of me or nervous they were going to have a match with me. So I took a defensive approach and I let them throw me around for about 5 months. I just learned how to bump and sell, bump and sell. That's all I did. And then I added in my offense, my repertoire after 5 months. And then I made my debut just 2 months later, which I wasn't even ready for.
Yeah, it's seven months of training in professional wrestling is nothing.
No.
And I remember, I'm sure it's a foggy memory. I'm now 40, so we're going back to me being, a sophomore or junior in high school.
Yeah.
But going back, I remember when you debuted in, I might have been even like eighth or ninth grade.
Mhm.
I remember when you debuted in WWE. Was it WWF at the time? I don't even remember when
It
that shifted
was
over.
WWF.
Okay, so
Yes.
when you debuted with that company, I remember immediately loving your character. Now, I was always the guy who liked everybody, like who liked the guy who everybody hated, right? I love
Yeah.
The Rock when they
You love
said
the
die,
heels.
Rocky,
Yeah.
die. And I've
Yeah.
always been that person, right? And so I was like, this guy seems so amazing. Now, I didn't know the back workings of wrestling at the time. I didn't understand the training and the things that went into it. But one thing that I was enamored by was the way you could control the audience.
Right.
Talk a little bit about that, because you've said in interviews that you didn't like talking, like you weren't somebody who talked a lot. How were you able to make that shift for yourself and really, like a fish to water, grab onto it very, very quickly?
Well, what happened was I was training for 7 months, and they sent me down to Memphis for a few months, and I cut one promo down there. That was about it. We didn't have OVW back then. We didn't have NXT back then. We didn't have any type of training, so I never learned how to cut a promo. And I remember my debut that night. Vince McMahon pulled me aside and said, "Listen, you're going to cut a promo tonight, and you're going to have a wrestling match." I said, "Vince, I don't know how to cut promos." He's like, "Well, you're gonna learn how tonight." I said, "Yeah, but I only cut one promo in Memphis. It was horrible." He said, "Well, you're gonna either sink or swim. I'm giving you an opportunity right now. You're either gonna sink or you're gonna swim. You're gonna pass or you're gonna fail. Do you want this opportunity?" I said, "Yes." So he starts telling me what I was gonna say in the promo, and I'm like, "Vince, you're not writing it down for me, because you write it down, you can study it." He said, "No, I'm gonna just tell it to you one time, and I want you to go out there and do it." So he tells me it. He's taking forever. I was like, "Wow, this is like 6 minutes goes by. I'm not even listening anymore." And Vince gets done. He goes, "Okay, I want you to go out and cut the promo." I said, "Vince, I'm sorry, but I didn't hear a word you said. Could you repeat it?" So he said, "I'm going to repeat it one more time. And then you go out there, you either sink or swim." So he told me it, and I got about 80% of it right. He was like, "You know what? This kid has ability. I can work with this kid." So he starts having me cut promos every week. So I'm learning on the job, and the
Yeah.
promos are getting longer and longer and longer. I ended up mastering the promos, and uh, I ended up becoming one of the best in the business at controlling the crowd, with the promos. And I didn't think I'd ever be like that. I thought they were going to use me for wrestling only, and I was going to be on the weekend wrestling show, and that was it. I really didn't have high expectations for me in WWE, just because I knew I wasn't going to talk. But Vince forced me to do it, and I learned on the job. And not only that, but only getting 7 months of training, wrestling training, I didn't know psychology yet. I didn't know how to structure a match longer than 6 minutes. So my opponents had to structure it for me and call the whole match in the ring so I wouldn't forget a spot. I was learning on the job my first year, and
That's
it was
crazy.
really difficult. I mean, they started me way too early. I'll give you an example. Brock Lesnar trained for 3 years before he went on television.
Wow.
I was 7 months. It was ridiculously quick.
Yeah, to hear that is absolutely unbelievable. And I wonder, because you quickly got a title, a second title, the world title. I think you were one of the fastest to get a world title,
I did
debut
in
to
10
world
months,
title.
yeah, on TV. Yeah, I beat The Rock, yes.
Yeah, which is crazy. 10 months on TV, beat The Rock, and now people see who The Rock is now, which is crazy. But
Yeah.
when I hear that, I go, was there ever heat in the locker room for you, or did you come from a place of being a student? Because that was so quick.
Well, you know what? I'll tell you why I didn't have heat, because I had humility. I let my peers know that I was no better than them, even though I was Olympic gold medalist and I knew I was better than them. I didn't make them think I had a bad attitude, that I was a cocky, arrogant person. I was humble and I had humility. and I was a team player. And I told them I will do whatever you guys want to do to make the product as good as it possibly could. So I was working together with them, and because I was still easy to get along with, they were helping me in my matches when I started out. So they were not only did they respect me, but they were helping me get better and better, because I had to have my opponents had to teach me while I was learning on the job my first year. So because of that, because I was humble and had humility, and I got along with everybody, I never had any heat in the locker room. Now, there were a lot of guys that came in, they had a chip on their shoulder, and they didn't last long, or they
Yeah.
got ribbed to death. So, I mean, things got horrible at times. That one time, I'm not going to tell you which wrestler, but he ordered food and somebody crapped in his order.
Oh my gosh.
And he ate the whole thing. I mean, oh my gosh, like how cruel can you be? So, if
Wow.
you get heat with the boys, bad things can happen to you.
Yeah, I will. I'll share this with you, and I'll tell you who it was after I stop recording. But I
Okay.
interviewed a guy who you had a face to face with at one point, and it's the only episode I never released because I
Okay.
just didn't like the way that it went. I'll tell you who it is post interview.
Okay.
But it goes to lend to that humility of when you enter something new, you have to understand where you stand, right? And being humble and being able to ask the right questions and willingness to learn from these individuals who have been doing it longer, I think is so key to everything. And I imagine that's something you've taken into everything in your life.
Yeah, yeah. I've always learned from others, and I was always a quick learner. And I will say this: when I was a kid, I was a bit of a sissy. I wasn't a very tough individual. As a matter of fact, my family doubted if I'd ever be good at sports. I mean, I got my ass handed to me so many times as a kid wrestling, and
Wow.
football. I was decent. I wasn't great, but the older I got, and the more my brothers pushed me, I started getting better and better. And eventually I started becoming the best at what I did. And I just had a lot of growth throughout my years of getting better and better. And it's because I had a good base, my family. They were the type of people that would do anything they could to help me out and make sure I was on the right path. And without them, I couldn't have done this.
Yeah, I love that, man. And so one thing we didn't mention is that you won a gold medal with a broken freaking neck, as you said many, many times on television.
Yeah.
And at first, I didn't realize it was true. And then once the internet took off and I was able to dig a little bit deeper, I'm like, this
Yeah.
is crazy. Now, I don't believe they would allow that to happen these days, right? With all the
No,
rules
no.
and regulations and that stuff. Talk a little bit how you were able to, work through that injury, and then how that injury happened time and time again in your, wrestling career, and what you were able to do with that.
Okay, what happened is I was at the U.S. Open, the first round of the Olympic trials in 1996, and I got thrown on my head. And I was in the semifinals having a great tournament. I got thrown on my head and I broke my neck and I didn't know it, so I kept wrestling. My neck was killing me and my arms were totally numb. I couldn't feel my arms. And I barely won the semifinals. And I went on the finals later on that day and wrestled with my neck in the same condition. And I barely won the finals. So I won the first round of the Olympic trials. And thank God I did, because if I would have taken second, I would have had to go to a mini tournament to wrestle the guy that won the U.S. Open. So whoever would have
Mm,
beat me at the U.S. Open, I would have to wrestle the number 3 to 6 place winners in a mini tournament to wrestle the winner of the U.S. Open. So if I didn't wrestle in the finals and win that match, I would have had to go through the ringer,
yeah.
the 5 toughest kids in my weight class. And so I'm glad I did. And actually, my brothers forced me to do it. My neck was hurting so badly. I was like, guys, I just want to take second. My neck's killing me. I can't wrestle again. They're like, screw that. You're wrestling.
Hmm.
So, and they explained to me why. They said, you're injured right now. If you lose today, if you forfeit, you're going to have to do a mini tournament. And I don't think your neck's going to make it through that. So I won that match. And I came home the next day and I went to my doctor. He took an MRI of my neck and he said, listen, you have 4 broken vertebrae in your neck. You have 2 discs sticking directly in your spinal cord, and you have a badly bruised spinal cord. You can't wrestle anymore. You're done. And I was devastated. But me being a stubborn person I am, and someone that would never give up, I went to another doctor to get a second opinion. And this doctor basically said the same thing, but he also said, when is the next round of the Olympic trials? I said, 6 weeks. He said, you know what? I might be able to get you ready by then. I said, well,
Mm.
what's your plan? He said, well, you're not going to be able to train much up until then. You're gonna have to let your neck rest and heal. And it won't be entirely healed by then, but it'll be healed enough that you can still go. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a doctor travel with you to the Olympic trials and the Olympic Games. And this doctor is going to stick you with 12 different shots of Novocaine all throughout your neck. Therefore, you won't feel
Oh,
the pain. You'll forget your neck is broken and you'll rest more freely. But he said, I'm warning you, an hour after your matches are over, you're going to be in excruciating pain from the abuse neck takes during those matches. He said, are you okay with this? I said, yes. You know what? I won the Olympic trials. I won the Olympic gold medal with a broken neck, and I made my childhood dream come true. Now I went to the WWE, and 2 years into the business, I break my neck again. I was wrestling Brock Lesnar. He had me I was on his back like piggyback, and he ran across the ring. He went to turn our backs to the corner to the turnbuckle, and we turned sideways, and he was running full speed. My neck whiplash sideways, and I heard a bunch of cracking in my neck. I
mm.
re-broke my neck again, and so I went to the doctor the next day. He said, you have to have another surgery. And I was like, oh, damn, I have WrestleMania coming up in a few weeks. He said, well, you're not going to be able to do it. I said, well, so what happened is the doctor at that point in time, 2003, you could get away with, a doctor could clear you a little easier back then. Like in the 96 Olympics, a doctor cleared me easily.
Yeah.
In 2003, it was still the same. And I talked the doctor into allowing me to compete or perform at WrestleMania. I said, I'll have the surgery the next day he said, well, you just have to be careful. He said, don't make it worse than it is. You could end up paralyzed.
Mm.
So I ended up wrestling, and I had the surgery after that. And then 6 months later, 2 months later, I ended up coming back. I hurried back to the roster. And 6 months after that, I broke my neck again. And
Oh.
then I broke my neck again 6 months after that. And then a year and a half after that, I broke my neck again. So the problem was I kept coming back too early. I wasn't letting my neck completely heal. And that's why I believe I kept re-breaking my neck over and over again. And that's my fault. And the business is kind of crazy because if you're out for a while, you're forgotten. And
Mm.
you get kind of nervous that the company's going to forget about you and start pushing these younger athletes, and they're going to take your place. So you always want to get back in the mix as soon as you can. And I wish I didn't do that. I wish I would have known my value back then, that nobody was going to be able to replace me. If I would have had that mentality, I probably wouldn't have broken my neck so many times.
Yeah, that drive and determination that you have that we talked about earlier almost lended to a negative side of the approach there, just being like, no, I need to be the guy, I need to get back in there,
Yeah.
and breaking a little too soon. Like I have a pinched disc in the bottom of my neck right now, and I'll tell
Yeah.
you this, it's terrible. I couldn't imagine breaking my neck, let alone a little pinched disc that I
You know
have
what? I'm not
currently.
going to lie to you. The pinch discs actually hurt worse.
Really, that's
Yeah, yeah.
crazy. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
that right now I have a pinched disc in my lower back. It bothers the shit out of me. I mean, it's just agonizing pain all the time.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's not the best. I'm dealing with
no.
it the best I can, holistically, chiropractors trying not to get into a surgery world because I know, both my parents at one point had their necks fused and it's not where
You
you
know
want to
what?
go.
I'll tell you this. I couldn't have it done, but I think you can. Ha- Look at artificial disc replacement.
Yeah, you talked
It,
about this with Rogan, right?
yeah, but I couldn't do it because when I got an MRI of my neck is so damaged that I don't have any discs anymore. I have all bone all the way up and down my
Oh,
neck. It naturally fused together. There were so many injuries and so many breaks that it just fused together. So there's nothing I can do with my neck. I have to deal with the pain the way it is. And I was trying to get artificial disc replacements, but because my neck fused together naturally, I can't have it done anymore. But I'm telling you, that surgery is awesome. That will fix your problem.
yeah, it looked amazing when you guys were talking about it. And actually the MMA fighter that he was talking about, Aljamain, he's been on this show as well. So I could reach out to him and be like, dude, what's the process here? It's
Right.
fascinating. But when I hear your journey, obviously you were only in WWE for a total of 9 years. but
Yeah.
the impact that you made are the same of The Undertaker and Stone Cold and Shawn Michaels and these guys who were with WWE for even longer than that and more
25,
consistently
30
that.
years. Yeah.
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing. Now you left, you went to TNA, which is a lesser known wrestling organization, but some of your best work was done in TNA and it's kind of forgotten about a little bit. Talk a little bit about why you left and went to TNA and decided to go that route, and you crushed it over there.
You know what? I did have a great career at TNA. I thought it was better than my WWE career, and that's hard for me to say. But I decided to leave the WWE because of health reasons. My injuries and working 300 days a year was just way too difficult for me. And I also had I had an addiction problem, and it was getting worse and worse and worse. And the more I injured, the more I was taken, and I just felt like I was in a really bad position. And health wise, I felt I needed to get out of WWE. And when I got out, I got my painkiller problem under control. But then what an addict does, he switches from one drug to the other. So I started drinking alcohol excessively. And
Mm.
in TNA, I had such a great career there. But the problem was, I, uh, I ended up having 4 DUIs in 5 years. I was making
Wow.
horrible choices. The alcohol just overcame my life, and it was number one to me. And I was making such horrible choices, drinking and driving. When I first got to TNA and I started drinking, I would do it at the hotel room at the end of the night when the show was over, and I would drink my 12 pack and pass out and go to sleep. But I started getting careless and reckless and out of control and irresponsible. And I started drinking while I was driving to the next town before I checked in my hotel room. I was drinking while I was driving. I got 4 DUIs in 5 years. My life
Wow.
spiraled out of control. I lost my reputation. Everything I worked for, I was at the lowest point in my life. And I remember when I was in jail after my fourth DUI, I called my wife and she said, "Listen, I can't do this anymore. You either go to rehab or I'm taking the kids and I'm leaving." And I didn't want to lose my wife and my kids, so I went to rehab. And it was the best decision I ever made. I've been clean and sober for 14 years now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's addiction's a terrible thing. I ended up losing my mom to a 20-year battle with opioids. And
That's a shame. My sister, same thing. Yeah.
yeah. And so to see it, to see and I know you and Rogan talked about this, and I don't want to kill a dead horse or whatever they say. I'm terrible with saying, so I'm that guy.
Beat a dead horse.
Beat a dead horse. The
Yeah.
horse is already dead. I'm not killing it. So beat a dead horse. But these pharmaceutical companies who really took advantage of so many people, both you and I are victims of that in so many ways, right? And
Yeah.
the fact that you speak out about it and about your battle, I appreciate that truly. Like, I think it makes an impact. I think people hear what you're saying, and you're the proof that you can overcome, even though you, like you said, you're in pain every day still. You're still able to move forward. So what are you doing now for the pain? What's your daily regimen
You
look
know
like?
what? I have a lot of techniques. I do a lot of stretching. I have neck exercises that I do that really help me out. Like they call it the chicken, and it works extremely well. But if you bob your head forward and backward like this,
Yeah.
it frees up your spinal cord, and alleviates pain. I also do traction, where I have my head pulled away from my body. Um, I do neck stretches all the time to try to keep the mobility in my neck. It's not that great, but it's a lot better than it used to be. And I also do anti-gravity, where I hang upside down because I have problems with my lower back. I had my knees replaced, so I've had a lot of injuries throughout my career, and I've been able to alleviate the pain by doing different exercises, and I do a lot of stretching too. I'm going to start doing yoga, as a matter of fact, because I know it's done wonders for people, and I think that's my next step.
Are you doing it with DDP?
Oh, definitely. I'm going to do it to EP. He asks me every year, "Come on, man. I want to get you on board." And you know what? That guy's incredible because he doesn't make money. He makes money, obviously, because, he has a great business, but he's not asking for money from any of his friends. He's willing to help everybody out free of charge, and give you advice and do whatever he can to help you out. And I think that's what makes him an incredible person.
Yeah, he's been a guest on the podcast. And afterwards, like randomly at my doorstep, like all this DDPY stuff showed up. He gave me like the free membership. I was like, this is crazy. Like just absolutely unbelievable. Just a really, really good guy. But I'm excited to see, the progress you make with that because there are so many incredible stories, whether it be former wrestlers or just people who
Oh,
have been hurt through life.
I,
It's
I
amazing.
just saw I just saw Butterbean last week at an appearance. He took the DDP yoga. He lost 200 pounds, maybe 300 pounds. He couldn't stand straight up. He was bent over like an old man. He couldn't get his back straight. He did DDP yoga for 6 months. He looks incredible. He
Yeah.
doesn't have any excess fat. His back is great. He's 100% healthy, and he's walking around normal, like there's nothing wrong with him. And it was like, whoa, that's leaps and bounds. I mean, you talk about improvement. That's a blessing, and
Yeah.
DDP is a blessing. His whole program is incredible.
It's true. So shout out to DDP. I mean,
Shout
for
out to
for
DDP,
sure.
yes,
I
DDP.
I love it. So obviously, look, you've taken many roles in wrestling. You were a wrestler. I believe you were a GM. You played GM for a while,
Yeah,
and
did
you've
that
done
a
all
couple
the
of times.
yeah. So it's you had that storyline with Jason Jordan and Chad Gable, and everybody thought Gable was going to be the guy. We went the other way on that one.
Yeah.
Do you ever see yourself getting involved again in storylines in the future? Is that something that you want or something that you desire to have?
You know what? It has to be the right thing, and the money has to be right. When you talk about the WLB, you're talking about a big time business, and you have to have the business mindset when you go in the WLB. If you don't, they could possibly take advantage of that. So like I was supposed to manage Matt Riddle, who I absolutely love, and they offered me a deal, and I was like, "Are you serious?" Like, the money wasn't that great, and I was like, "Whoa, I have to refuse." So I've been learning what my value is and what I would do something for. And you have to meet my requirement if you want me to do it. I know that Chad Gable has a stable right now, and they're a bunch of shooters. And I think that would be a good group for me to possibly manage. But they haven't contacted me yet. I'm not expecting them to, but if they do, I'll definitely consider it.
Yeah, that's it's amazing when you know what your worth is too. I think some people need to figure that out quicker. A lot of people get it taken advantage of, whether that be in wrestling or business or just life in general.
You're
Understanding
absolutely
your worth
right.
is
Yeah.
huge. So I want to ask you a question that I asked every single person on this show. It's a two-part question. The first part is, what is your definition of success? And the second part is, what are three things you do every single day to ensure that success for yourself?
Oh, wow. My definition of success is basically if you're happy or not, because when you have success and you're winning every day, you're going to be in a much better mood than if you're failing. And so I think for me, emotionally, it's being happy and excited about life, knowing that good things are happening in my life, and I'm going to continue to go down that road because that's the best road possible. The three things I do for that, I have incredible work ethic. I work harder than anybody. I have a confidence about myself that took me a while to get there. You would think that winning an Olympic gold medal and being a multi-time world champion at WWE that I'd have incredible confidence. I didn't, and it had a lot to do with my insecurity. About who I was, and I always thought I wasn't good enough, and so I learned to change that. And last but not least is I would say um, I love I keep an open mind and I try to learn each and every day new things. So I try to bring new things to the table so that my life continues to evolve. And I think those are the three things that makes me who I am.
I love it, and it speaks volumes to who you are, right? Like everything you've done, you've been ultra successful at because you've put in the work. Nothing was handed to you; it was you going out there and taking advantage of your hard work and pushing forward through it, man. So kudos to you for all that success. So
Thank you.
what?
Thank you.
So what's next for Kurt Angle? What's the next exciting things beyond the movie, beyond helping these college athletes? What else are you working on? Because I know you're always competing in something.
You know what? Right now, my job right now, most importantly, is being there for my kids. When I was wrestling and pro wrestling, I didn't see my kids at all. I wasn't that great of a father because I wasn't always there. I was not there most of the time. But now I'm able to spend time with my kids. I take them to all their sporting events. I take them to piano lessons. I take them to learning therapy. I take them to the tutor. I'm a damn Uber service now. But you know what's cool about it is I spend every moment with my wife and my kids, and I never thought that that would make me happy. And it's brought extreme joy to my life, and being able to be there for them every single day makes me know that I have a bigger purpose in my life, and that's being an incredible father to my kids. My daughter Kira just came up. She's 21 years old, and she came up with her boyfriend. She wanted me to meet him because she moved in with him. She's my older daughter. I had her from a different marriage. And she came up and brought her boyfriend with her. And I met her boyfriend. And I was like, listen, she's my first daughter. I'm going to be very protective of her. You do anything wrong or disrespectful, I'm coming after you. And he was like, oh, I promise, Mr. Angle, I'm going to treat her well. So I love being there for my kids and doing whatever I can to make their lives better.
I love it, man. And it's, I'm a newer bonus dad. So I married my wife a year and a half ago. And so I have two step kids, and
Okay.
parenting is the hardest thing on the planet for sure. But has its
It
massive
especially
rewards.
is when you marry into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're trying to figure it all out. We've been together for 5.5 years though. So I've been in that role for
Okay.
quite some time. So it's going well for sure. We love the life that
Good.
we built. So I want to wrap up the interview with the same question that I ask every single person on this show, which is, in your life, what has been your biggest moment of growth?
Biggest moment of growth. Um, I would say when I won my state championship in high school. Uh, Winning that state championship in wrestling enabled me to believe in myself that I could go beyond what my brothers were able to do. None of my brothers won a state championship. They placed at states, but nobody won a state championship. And when I won those states, that set me aside and made me realize that there are bigger and better things coming in my life. And I just have to continue to work hard and go toward those goals because every level I went to after high school was college. And when college, it was about winning the nationals, the NCAA championships. And I won two titles there. And then that enabled me to have the confidence to go to the next level, which was the world team and Olympic team levels. And I became a 1995 world champion and 1996 Olympic gold medalist. So winning that state championship, it allowed me to have growth to go up above and beyond of winning just a state championship, of being a national champion and a world and Olympic champion. So if it wasn't for that moment, I don't know if I would have done it.
I love it, man. So one last question. Where do
Yeah.
people go to support these amateur wrestlers that you're looking to push through the Olympics?
Thank you for remembering that. Yeah, I talked about it and told everybody, hey, donate, but I didn't give them an address. Go to kurtangle.org. That's kurtangle.org. Go to that link, tap the link, and donate whatever money you can. I promise it will come to good use. These athletes will be so grateful. They're not making a lot of money. It's enough for them to make ends meet just so they can train full time and compete full time. So it's not about making a big amount of money. It's just for them to get through the next 4 years so they don't have to worry about anything else but training and competition.
I love it. Kurt, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your wisdom with my audience, man. This has been an amazing conversation, dude. Thank you so much.
Thanks, man. This is one of my favorite interviews I've done. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, man.